Now today is a good example of why I was really happy to get that ride in yesterday. The weather changed overnight, and it could have been snow, but it looks like we're going to get about 3 inches of rain, and it's a mess out there. And what that means is even after it stops raining, the roads will be a mess for a couple of days, so we're going to knuckle down and we'll get a lot of work done, I think, today. Today we have a good day to be inside. And the first thing I wanted to do today, I have this parallel line that I'm going to work all my trim off. So I want to transpose that line up on the tank, make a pattern, so that when I go to paint the tank, see, I can't take the bike apart yet because I still need to know where that parallel line is up there. John is going to finish that trim in the next couple of days, send me the template so I can lay it out in full scale. Then we'll be ready to take that part off, or we have to change plan. We change plans all the time. But I need to capture that angle up onto the tank with some kind of a paper pattern, or otherwise this Kawasaki is going to be like that, and I don't want that. Now I had to make several patterns before I'm even close. Now I wanted to take a little more off, a little more off, a little more off, and since it's a crappy rainy day, I don't care how long this takes. Step one is I have to have a pattern on that before I take all of these parts apart in the future. In a final trim, now I'll make that into a real cardboard pattern. Just to pick up that line, pick up that line, pick up the line, and that Kawasaki word is going to come down about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. But I have, the most important thing is I have it parallel. And we're going to try to plan the rest of the day around being inside the house because it is really raining out here. The leaves are falling. Just, boy, am I glad we got the ride in yesterday. You got to steal those rides when you can. Just a couple of weeks ago, these beautiful leaves are now just a nightmare to rake up and put into the landfill. So from the paper pattern, this is just office paper. I used the thicker, heavier cardboard where I could really trim it little by little. I got the exact shape I want. I have the lettering front to back, and I know what I want to do is ultimately lower it about 1 inch just to make room for the radar detector. But what I'm really concerned with is I now have a template to establish that line relative to the line in the fairing. That should really work to our advantage when it comes time to setting up that stencil. So the last couple of days under the heating vent, Turbo Steve tank is absorbing all the heat from the house. These parts have been down in the cellar and they're going to get hung up by the heating vent this afternoon. And they look like they're going to be really, really nice. Now the big thing I got from this is how much I like that color gold. That I was just thrilled with that color gold. That exactly met what I had in mind. So knowing that, and knowing that the finish has been buffing out, this part is already buffed and ready to put back on a motorcycle. So we have parts here that are drying, and as we always do with leapfrogging, one part is drying, one part is getting some extra drying, and one part is still up by the, well, we got to buff that part out today. In fact, we'll get that done as the next thing. And all these patterns that we have, and John is still working on this lettering, and what I have is he's going to print this, and we worked on this last night. He's going to print this up on a paper, that like a stencil paper, that I can cut this out with a brand new razor, make a paint mask out of this, and that way that color, the letters 650R, will be an exact match to the gold that we mixed, the custom gold, which we obviously really like. But look how this project has evolved in basically in a month that we've been working on it. It's gone from, there's been about 100 changes, and I'm sure there's more than 100 to come. But that's what makes this an exciting adventure. Instead of just, you know, accepting that you go to the dealer, you write a check and you ride a motorcycle. This is a whole different adventure. And everybody I know likes to customize their own motorcycle, make it personal, make it their own, not just have it that you pull into a hamburger place and there's 14 more just like yours, the same color even. There will be no hamburger joints with that color. There'll probably be one. I'll go down there, there'll be somebody with black and gold. Anyway, we got to get to work. Boy, this weather could have been so much worse. This could have been snow. We're right on the cusp of having snow, or even the birds are not impressed. And once I have my coffee, I'll be ready to go grind away at that side cover. Now, before I actually get to work, I always like to take a look at how this all came to be. And this is my original 73 350 race bike, one of them. And that's what the picture in my mind was, the black and the gold. So at some point in time when this table is filled up with motorcycle parts, I'll have a then and now. I'm not sure if you can see this because I'm working off a computer screen just to show this. What John has done is laid out the 650 lettering for the stencil in various thicknesses. Now when you go to cut this with a razor blade, of course, I'm guessing the thinner the better. I'm just guessing, but I don't know for sure. Anyway, I'll think this through because this is one of the things that's going to be a real focal point of this restoration, is getting this lettering really nice and crisp and in that color gold. Now when I printed these out, what I'll do once I totally wake up here, they're all different thicknesses, and that's the beauty of working with a computer and somebody like John that has good computer skills. And then thank you, John Pothier, of course. Now I'm going to try it. In fact, I was going to try several different razor blades here, but what I'm going to do is just save this for a time when I can sit and relax, because this is really, you have to be patient. It makes me crazy when I have to do this kind of stuff, but I know it's doable. So anyway, that's one more step toward having we have it aligned correctly, and we have hopefully the logo that we want. So the first step of any kind of buff out, we have that final part. It's been drying up there. It's to sand it flat with 2000 grit Indasa, and this is the system we've used and probably will continue to use until we find something better. But we are always experimenting. So here's our part, and I'm sure an awful lot of people would just be satisfied with that finish, but I like to have everything buffed out. And this step is always the step people try to avoid. I'm not sure why. But today it's a pouring rainy day. It's freezing cold outside, and the coffee is nice here in the shop. In fact, I like being in the shop on a day like today. Now, I didn't want to be too aggressive about this, but there were there's a couple of spots here. A couple of spots, I don't know, it picked up dust when we were painting the final clear, but you just don't want it. You don't want to break through on an edge if possible. And usually this part of it, I've done this in real time so often that it's almost pointless to do it over and over and over again. But like I said, I do like to experiment, and I do have 2,500 paper, I have 3,000 paper, I have just endless amounts of stuff. But I tried to come up with a system, and this is the system that seems to work the best for me, is the 2000 grit Indasa, because the sandpaper, if you take 3 different brands of sandpaper and the same number, sometimes they're like shoes. They're not exactly the same. I'm sure they should be, but maybe it's the way they manufacture the paper or something. Some are a lot grittier. I've noticed that. Anyway, not to belabor the point, but step 1 is to get the whole part flat sanded out. I always like to do a little bit of that in real time so people don't get confused. Let me just get this up on the camera. And I think you can see that's what a flat block sanding looks like. And I'll get the whole part done and we'll be ready to buff. Now once everything is block sanded out, I go dry the part off, look for any little shiny spots, any little fish eyes, any dust. Because remember, we paint outside, and even if you painted in a paint booth, there'd be some. It'd be a lot less, but there'd be some. But the whole point here is, if you're very careful and fussy and you get everything block sanded flat, the buffing part goes so much easier. I always say, if you spend 5 minutes wet sanding, you save 10 minutes with the buffing wheel. And to me, you just have to make the commitment. You want it perfect, and when you do, it's not that difficult to do it. It's a lot of labor, but this is certainly not really not like making a rocket ship to the moon or a model airplane even. This is just labor. It's like mixing concrete. So once I have that part perfectly flat and I'm happy with it, then I can move on to the buffing operation. And I always, by doing a leapfrogging type of restoration, I always have something ready to buff. I have something ready for clear. I have something, we can actually sand that this afternoon if we want. That's drying an extra day. And always, the more you let it dry. Now I know there's a counterpoint to that, and professional body men that are trying to make money always say, oh, you buff it out in a half an hour, yeah, 2 days or whatever. If you're not a professional, let it dry a couple extra days. If you can put it up by a heating vent, even better. Because the buffing operation, once you do this prep to turn this into this, it should be a piece of cake. Now, as you can imagine, over the last 50 plus years that I've been doing this, yeah, that's 50, 5-0, not 15. I've tried a lot of, in the old days it was old DuPont red and white rubbing compound. Well, the products have gotten much better, and this is the best one I've found. You can buy this at any, I guess you could buy it online too. And it is a little more pricey than what you would normally spend for the stuff you buy in AutoZone. This stuff works 10 times better. Now, I always try to put information that I think is going to be useful to people that are learning how to finish. And one of the things I know is useful to me, I have an old laundry basket. I have all my products, and of course I've got all kind of Meguiar's and whatever. But there's things you need that sometimes you underestimate. Now, these things, they're about $3 in Harbor Freight, and you get 2 for $3. So what happens is I'm always tempted to, when I come at, I say, wow, that pad looks pretty nice and new. No, when I'm doing the work and I put all my heart and soul into it, I want a new pad, and believe me, it pays. And these old pads you could save. They're good for when you're going to do your car, or you're going to buff out of your driveway or something that you can't live without. But when you really want to do high quality work, and these are not the only choice you have, because if you really want to spend money, and I do have a big buffer, I have a big buffer, you can buy the soft pads, and I always write what's on that pad. But here's the point. I always try to do this on video with the simplest, cheapest equipment. Because obviously if you worked in a body shop, you could just go get your $500 buffer and dial it into exactly the right RPM and everything. Yeah, but the people that I think benefit most from the video, they're doing it on a budget, and they're doing it with some limited time. So we'll take one of our buffers, and then these are about $15 when you get the coupon from Harbor Freight. I've got a whole bucket full of them, and I have a couple of new ones I haven't opened up. They last long enough to buff out plenty of motorcycles or a couple of 2 or 3 cars before the brushes go. And then you get another one. So in case I didn't put this on, these are the least expensive ones, and they're terry cloth. They do make microfiber ones, but I found this system I use, these are perfectly adequate. I always think, you know, it's really nice if you have a lot of money and you enjoy spending it. Of course, what would be the purpose of having money if you didn't spend it? But in my case, you know, well, not to make a point, but I grew up really poor, and I value every nickel, and I don't like throwing anything away. Now look, this looks like it's getting a little gringy here. Oh, we'll just get rid of this. But I never worry about it. All of the Harbor Freight tools, they're inexpensive for the kind of work I'm doing. If I was in business and trying to make money, well, I might want more expensive tools, but these are certainly good. And I wish Harbor Freight would watch some of these videos and sponsor me. That would be nice. Now, believe me, if there's a couple of things to learn from buffing, there's a couple of do's and don'ts that are very simple. Don't use the old pad. That's number one. Get the part perfectly flat before you buff it. And use this 4CR, and you will have good success. Now, a couple of things that I have seen guys do this. Maybe it's a good idea if you open this up. I have seen guys that really do know how to do this. The Ammo NYC guys, and they put some pre-disclosed amount and small amounts of this, small amounts of that. Now that's one way. I'm sure that would work great for a car, because on a car you're using this flat surface. I'm going to be using the edge of the part. So in my case, and of course if you're using up an old pad, the material is all dried up and it's rougher, you tend to, and if you look real close, and people that really do know about paint, look at something, they see scratches where other people don't see scratches. So I don't want to have this go flying off all into the universe here, but again, now this is my thing because I know what's going to happen when I start doing this. The pad's going to tend to get dry. So this will allow me, and I'll take my part that's sanded, and this is just my way of doing it. I don't think, maybe if I went to get a job in a body shop, a guy would say, oh, you're doing this wrong, oh, you got to do it my way. And I've seen people, and I know they're professionals, and they seem to make a good living doing it, but everybody develops their own little style, a little thing that they do. Now my thing here is, and this is important for me, I like to show things without a camera cut. Kind of boring, but you can be bored, because if you learn something, it's worth being bored. So here's where we start. We got our cheesy little $15 buffer, and I'm just going to pick one spot. I don't have to be too, you know. I like to show it in real time with no camera cuts. Well, nothing aggravates me more than if I watch a half-hour video and I want to see how they pour a concrete floor, and the truck backs up and the next scene is the concrete is poured. That's not why I'm watching the video. Now maybe some people are watching it just to be entertained. I'm not sure. But I know if you let this go basically a minute or two, and the things I try to do are just gently move it. Don't press down so hard that you hear the buffer stop or slow down. It's like using a Dremel tool. You want it to be full speed. Let the polish do the work. And it usually, people that really want to paint and have come to the shop and picked up the skill, it's really not that difficult, believe me. What it is you've got to really want to do it, because basically it's dirty work. It's just an ordinary microfiber. And I always say that if you want to learn this skill, then here's a perfectly clean one, so we can see what we got. Now, that's real time, no camera cuts. You know, we're not doing a Nutrisystem ad where you look and the person's 300 pounds and then they eat Nutrisystem for a day and they're 250. That's, let me see if I can see it underneath here. I have to look, if you get some idea what we accomplished in that amount of time. Now obviously the trick is to do the whole part. Now the way this is coming out, there's no way to really get a buffer in there. So a lot of these things now, we used to buff the entire model airplanes out by hand because it just was too delicate to be using a machine. Well, some of the machines now are a lot better, but sometimes you have to do this and it just takes time. But again, it's like the wheels, the FZR wheels. If you look back at that video, I buffed the whole wheel by hand because there was really no practical way to get a buffer in there. And those wheels really came out. Now, I think they did anyway. I'm not prejudiced, you know. They're beautiful, trust me. Anyway, there's always some part of it you have to do by hand. Then at the end of this, we're going to put a nice coat of flitz on it. That's just for protection. I've got to get the wooden handle off and grind off all the extra wood that's back there. But having this part done, and these two parts, the beautiful part about this, these are solid carbon fiber. They're not plastic anymore. These are like a rock. You could cut yourself with this. This is all carbon fiber, solid carbon fiber. Not fake carbon fiber, not that stuff like toilet paper you pull off and glue on your motorcycle. Make it look like you have carbon fiber. This is carbon fiber. Now whenever I'm done buffing out a part, I like to get at least one coat of flitz on. The The purpose of using the flits, the purpose is not to really make it any shinier. It's plenty shiny. This gives it 6 months of protection. And right now the last thing I want is to have this finish deteriorate over the next, I assume we're going to be done with this come springtime, and the point is we take our time. I'm not doing this like I'm getting paid by the hour. I do everything. There's a saying that in Italy they used to build motorcycles as if time didn't exist, and I try to restore motorcycles. I certainly built model planes as if time didn't exist, because some of them I spent so much time, it was unbelievable. But now the point here is I love having beautiful finish, and I would like to have this finish on every part we take off the motorcycle or make, whether it's a part that's stock or a part we make out of carbon fiber. We have other parts we're going to make out of carbon fiber on this restoration. Parts we're going to polish. But I really do like having shiny stuff. Now we're ready to put this aside. I got to get rid of this. And these parts basically ready to put on a motorcycle. And this was a long time coming, a lot of work, but when you see how this all looks when a whole motorcycle is put back together, I think you're going to agree. And how nice that radius came out. This all looks like one part. It's all solid carbon fiber and epoxy. It's not plastic. It should be very durable, and I think it's going to be one of the defining parts of the motorcycle. So these are the first fully carbon fiber parts that are ready to put back on the motorcycle. Painting, the buffing, they're ready to go. Next time we get to do a work session, I think we'll wet sand these out. We'll give them an extra day to dry, and that extra day of drying between coats is always to your advantage, always. Well, the way these dried up, I'm looking forward to wet sanding them out. Next time we get a session, we really used up a day that the weather was just off the chart terrible. And got that, the first two parts are done. These will be the next two. These need to be thoroughly sanded, all the edges, all the corners. But then when I get the final clear and I get this buffed, I'll get to see what these are going to look like in the final, on the final motorcycle. I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, we used up a rainy day. I don't know what else to say. We drank a lot of coffee, got some parts buffed. Hope you were entertained by our video, and just keep painting things black and gold. That's all I can say. And thanks for watching.